If you've ever sat in an interview and heard, "So tell me about yourself," and felt your stomach drop, then this video is for you. Because here's what most people do. They start at the beginning of their career, they work through every single job that they've ever had, they talk for 3 minutes, and by the time that they're done, the interviewer has already made a decision. And it's not a good one. The brutal truth is this question is not an icebreaker, it's the interview. Okay? How you answer it sets the tone for everything that comes after it. Nail it, and you're on the front foot for the next 45 minutes. If you blow it, and you spend the rest of the conversation trying to recover, then you're off to a bad start. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to answer it, and then I'm going to show you how to build your own personalized answer using AI in around 10 minutes. Okay, so let's get started. Here's the first thing that you need to understand. When an interviewer says, "Tell me about yourself," they are not asking for a biography. They do not want a summary of your resume. What they're actually asking is 5 very specific questions at the same time. Who are you professionally? What are you strongest at? What evidence supports that? Why are you relevant to the role? And why do you actually want to be here? That's what's running through their head. Okay, most candidates ask the question they think they're being asked, which is, "Give me a career summary." And that's why most candidates give forgettable answers. This is not a biography question. Okay, it's a positioning question. And once you understand that, everything about how you prepare for it changes completely. Before I show you the fix, let's look at what's actually going wrong. Okay, so mistake number 1 is a resume recital. Okay, so walking through every single role chronologically, the interviewer has your resume in front of them already. Okay, reading it back to them adds 0 value to the particular interview. Okay, mistake number 2 is an unstructured ramble. Okay, so this is talking for minutes without any clear destination. There's no structure, and that means no confidence. Okay, the interviewer will stop listening, okay, and they will not take note with what you're actually communicating. Mistake number 3 is a generic introduction. Okay, so an answer that's so vague that it could apply to any company, any role, any industry. And it tells the interviewer that you didn't really prepare for their specific interview or their specific conversation. Mistake number 4 is an unsupported claim. Okay, so I'm experienced and results driven. Okay, says who? With what evidence? Okay, claims without evidence are just noise. Okay, so if you're just going to list things that you've done without actually backing it up with data or giving insight or context around that action, then it's essentially useless. Okay, number 5 is a memorized script. Okay, so you can tell when somebody's rehearsed every word. Okay, it's great to be prepared, but if it sounds robotic, it doesn't flow, and you're essentially just reciting a script that you've written, it will be obvious. Okay, the interviewer wants a conversation, not a performance. Okay, so the information that you're giving should be natural. Okay, it should be targeted and it should follow a particular flow or framework. And mistake number 6, and this is the biggest one, is the weak ending. Okay, trailing off with, "So yeah, that's me." Okay, you had their attention for 90 seconds and you're ending on absolutely nothing. Okay, the last thing that they hear is the thing that they'll remember, which is why the end of your answer is the most important thing. This is the part of your answer where you should be linking it back to the actual job requisition that you're interviewing for. And this is honestly the part that most people miss or never actually consider in the first place. Okay, a strong answer needs structure, evidence, and direction. Okay, which brings me to the framework that we actually want to use. So I want to introduce you to the bridge framework. Okay, it's a 6-part structure, very simple, and I use it with every client to build a "tell me about yourself" answer that actually lands. Okay, so if we just work through it, B is for background. So essentially, who you are professionally, the role that you either hold or that you're targeting, the years of experience that you have, the sectors that you worked in, and we want this to be 10 to 15 seconds max. Okay, R is relevant specialism. Okay, so not everything that you've ever done, just the part that's most relevant to the role that's actually in front of you, the role that you're interviewing for. Okay, we want to focus in on the problems that you solve, the tools that you use, the domain that you sit in. Okay, I'm going to keep it as simple as possible. I is impact. Okay, this is the most important element for the bulk of the answer. Okay, and it's one that most people skip. Okay, it needs to be specific. It needs to be a quantified result that actually proves the claim that you've potentially just made. Okay, not "I improved performance" or "I scaled X." Okay, we need a number, we need a percentage, we need detail behind the numbers that you give as well. Okay, because what we're trying to communicate here is a business outcome that you've previously achieved. Okay, and this sets us up for the next stages, which are the differentiator and also the explicit connection. Okay, so D is the differentiator. Okay, so what makes your approach different from every other candidate with a similar background? Because what most people overlook is that, yes, you are interviewing for a specific role. Okay, and yes, you may have overlapping skills, you may have overlapping experience with regards to the role responsibilities or the industry, but so may or so will all the other candidates that are also interviewing for the role. So what we are actually looking for here is something that separates you from the rest of the pack. Okay, this is where you stand out or blend in. Okay, G is goal. Okay, so what are you actually looking for now? Okay, we'll actually want this to be forward facing, not looking back. Okay, not I'm leaving because my manager's awful, or I'm leaving because I want a higher salary, or I'm leaving because X, Y, or Z. Okay, what we want to focus on is what are we looking to actually achieve next. Okay, and then E is the explicit connection. Okay, why this particular company? Why this particular project? Why this particular role? Okay, why now? Okay, it needs to be specific to the opportunity that's sitting in front of you. Okay, and this here is the difference between the average candidate interview answer and something that really stands out and takes you to that next level. Okay, all of these 6 sections are connected and they'll help you actually build that clear answer by the end of it. Okay, the key thing that I want you to remember here is to memorize the structure. Not every word. Okay, you're not performing a monologue, but you're having a conversation, and the framework inside your head will help you deliver it. Okay, so what we're going to actually look at next is what that looks like in practice. And then we'll look at a real example, and then we'll work out, okay, well, how can we apply this to your particular interview answer? Okay, so this particular example here that I'm using is a business analyst candidate example. Okay, so what we can see here is we've broken down every single element of this framework with like a mock answer or a mock section for the particular answer. Okay, what we're looking to achieve is an answer that roughly lasts somewhere between 60 to 90 seconds. Okay, but as a general rule, we want it to be no longer than 2 minutes. Okay, so if we look at this, it's a very simple example. We've got the actual background itself. I'm a business analyst with around 5 years of experience across pharma, retail, and tech. Super simple. We're explaining who we are, what we do, how long we've done it. Okay, and we've got the relevant specialism. I work across BI and reporting, SQL, Power BI, and process analysis, turning data into insights and better decisions. Okay, super simple. We're putting the keywords that actually help them understand and visualize what it is that you do. Okay. Now, when we look at impact, essentially what we're telling them here is, at my last role, okay, and then we're going in with a statement that showcases impact. Okay? It's super easy to actually do this. Okay, if you look at your resume, for example, if I pull this up, okay, so here's an example resume. When you apply for a job, you'll know which bullet points in your resume are most aligned to that particular job requisition. So this particular example here, the impact element of this framework, okay, you can essentially pull from your resume, okay, because you'll know which bullet point, which project, which piece of evidence is best aligned to that company. And that's essentially all we're doing here. We're just putting it into a more conversational layout. Okay, so at X company, I built or I did or whatever it is that's in your resume with evidence. Okay, so we're allowing somebody to understand the scale of the project, the environment that we worked in, the impact that we had, and why it was significant for the business. Okay, so scale and environment, the impact we had, why it was significant. Short and sweet. Okay, then we look at the differentiator. So what can help you or me as a candidate stand out versus the crowd? Okay, so in this particular example, I hold a specific type of certification, which helps me do X, Y, and Z. Okay, and it's super important that we look at this and we don't just focus on the sort of impact statements that they already have in front of them from your resume. Okay, so I hold a Lean Six Sigma Green Belt, so I go upstream, understand the workflow, find the gaps, and make sure that we solve the right problem. Okay, then we move into the goal. Okay, so I'm looking for a role where I can own or where I can X, Y, or Z. Okay, now this should be connected to the role that you're interviewing for. If you give a goal that is totally disconnected, it's pointless. Okay, the goal here is to essentially set yourself up for the explicit connection. Okay, so I'm looking for a role where I can own the full BA lifecycle, requirements, process modeling, etc., etc. And then we move into the explicit connection. So this is information that you can gather from the actual job description. It may be from the company website, it may be from an intro call that you've had, it may be just from information gathering that you've done generally about the company, and you understand where you fit in, okay, and where you believe they are looking for value, and then you can link it at the end. Okay, so this role on the X modernization project is exactly what I want because of meaningful impact in a complex, high accountability environment. Okay, this is a very basic example, but just to showcase to you the actual framework. Okay, the framework here creates the structure. Okay, your evidence makes it credible. The key here is to link your answer to the specific business or to the particular opportunity that you're interviewing for. And that's where loads of people go wrong. They'll prepare a tell me about yourself answer that is generic that they can recycle. But your tell me about yourself answer should be very specific to the job that you're interviewing for. Okay, it should change every single time. Okay, it's usually one of, if not the first questions that you'll actually face in an interview setting. So you should make sure that this is as well prepared as possible. It's as specific to the opportunity that you're interviewing for as possible. Okay, and it shouldn't be generic. You've got to essentially spoon feed the interviewer with information that helps them understand why you are relevant for the role. You cannot assume that they understand why you're relevant. You've got to give them that information. Okay. So here's where it gets interesting, okay? Because everything that I've just showed you there, okay, we can actually build these answers just using AI. Okay, so I built a tool called Job Seeker OS. It's used by all of my clients inside my accelerator program, and also ad hoc as well for people to use. So I'm going to show you exactly how to do it for your own role in real time. We'll go through an example. Okay, the Job Seeker OS is essentially a career coaching system that I built on top of Claude. Okay, there's over 50 pre-built career skills, which cover everything from resume writing to salary negotiation and obviously interview prep. Okay, one of the skills is specifically designed to build tell me about yourself answers using this specific bridge framework. Okay, so I'm going to show you exactly how that works. Okay, so all that you need to do is essentially head over to Claude and type in /command tell me about yourself. Okay, and then you just need to attach two things. Super simple. Okay, your resume, upload it as a file or paste it in, totally up to you, and then the job description. Okay, so I'm just going to say resume attached, and then JD. Okay, so I'm just going to attach my resume as a PDF, attach it as a docx, totally up to you. And then if we just head back into here, so I'm just going to use this particular job description. Get rid of that. Okay, let me just open this up. Okay, so we just use this business analyst job description, and the resume that I've attached is the same one that we just used in an example showcasing before. Okay, it's just a business analyst resume. Okay, so we head back in here, we'll paste this in and just say JD, pasted, and all you need to do here is literally just run the query. Okay, so watch what happens. The system here reads both documents and goes straight into stage one. Okay, so it's an intelligence extraction. This is super important because we want to make sure that the answer that we actually come out with and that we prepare and use for the interview is specific to the business, but in relation to the application that we've submitted. Okay, so it'll pull the strongest proof points from your resume. I identify what the role is actually looking for from the JD, and then it'll map it together. Okay, so what you can see here is it's clearly pulled out specific achievements from the resume. Okay, and in this case, obviously it's BA work. Okay, and then it will pull specific evidence from the job description in relation to where we have gaps, where we have alignment. Okay, what the specific role is asking for, what the problem and solution cases are for the business. Okay, and specifically what a recruiter might be looking for in a candidate profile to determine fit and alignment. Okay, then it will always give us a clarifying question. Okay, does anything need correcting before I build the bridge elements? Okay, in this case, we're just going to say no, and we're going to ask it to proceed. Okay, so here it goes into the actual bridge assembly. So it will build the 6 bridge elements. Okay, and you can see each one laid out separately. The background, relevant specialism, impact or proof point, differentiator, goal, and then the actual connection. Okay, super simple. Okay, this is where you can catch anything that doesn't quite sound like you. You can read each element and ask for any changes. Okay, but what you want to do is just double check the answer, check that you're happy with it, and then proceed. What you'll notice here is these are all now separate elements as part of one big answer. Okay, the reason they are separate at this point and slightly longer is that we want to gather as much information that could be relevant for the answer as possible before whittling it down and then making it into a more conversational piece. Okay, so check through it, and then essentially we move to stage 3 and just say yes, proceed. Okay, and then essentially you've got your finished answer. Okay, so it'll give you 2 versions. Version 1 is a labeled answer. Okay, so it'll have each bridge element shown separately. Okay, and then you can see the structure at a glance. Okay, version 2 is the actual spoken script. Okay, so you'll see it's got a slightly different writing output. Okay, it's broken into shorter paragraphs. Okay, and a bit of a better breakdown. Okay, and it'll map to the actual beat of the answer. Okay, so it makes it much easier to actually rehearse and feel like you're reading off a page. Okay, the word count and estimated delivery time will all be there, and you can read it out loud, time yourself, and then adjust the specific pacing. Okay, so you can see here word count, estimated delivery, approximately 2 minutes. Okay, and then what we can do here is we can just say proceed to stage 4. Okay, and it'll give you essentially some prompts, some tips to actually prepare this particular answer for an interview situation. Okay, super simple. But what we want to do here is try and aim for something that's within 2 minutes. Okay, so if we just look at this as an example, pull this up. Okay, and then just run through it. So, for example, I'm a business analyst with just over 5 years of experience in data analytics and business intelligence. I finished my master's in business analytics at NYU earlier this year, so I've been doing this work professionally whilst also going deep on the academic side of it. Most of my work has been on the data side of the BA function, writing SQL validation and reporting, building ETL pipelines, and working with engineering and product teams to translate what the business actually needs into something that they can build. Honestly, a lot of my time's been spent in that gap between what stakeholders ask for and what engineers can deliver, which is where I find the most interesting problems. One thing that I'm really proud of, BioInc, I built 8 automated ETL pipelines processing around 10 million rows of transactional data every day. And that cut processing time by around 35%, which meant that 6 analysts and product managers were getting faster, cleaner data without the manual work sitting in between. I've also done healthcare specific work, a predictive modeling project on 1.3 million patient records that hit a 0.91 AUC and tied to around 2.4 million in projected readmission savings. What I'd say is different about me is that I can do the technical side myself. Okay, write SQL, map source to target, do the data profiling, but I'm also comfortable walking a non-technical stakeholder through what the data actually means. I've worked in agile teams where being the link between business and engineering is the whole job, not a side task. At this point, I'm looking for a role where the data work is connected to real healthcare outcomes, where better data means better decisions for patients and providers. What caught my eye about Cohere specifically is the payer-provided problem you're solving. Most health tech companies work one side of that relationship, and the fact that Cohere's platform is built to reduce friction between the two, and that the data platform team is what makes the intelligence work at scale, is exactly the kind of environment that I want to be in. Okay, now we've got an answer that is less than 2 minutes, which is ideal. We cover all the elements of the bridge, okay, and you've got them all mapped out for you, and it's super simple. All you need to do is use the resume, use the job description, use that Claude skill, and then you're good to go. Okay, if you want to do it manually, it's super easy. All you need to do is break it down into those different um, bridge elements and put it into the framework. That's the system. The bridge framework gives you the structure. Your evidence makes it credible. And the tool I've just shown you inside Claude builds it in minutes, so you're not staring at a blank page the night before an interview. Okay, if you want access to Job Seeker OS, the link's in the description below. There are over 50 skills in there covering the full job search, from resume writing, LinkedIn optimization, interview prep, salary negotiation, all of it from start to finish. Okay, if this was useful, please subscribe. I post or try to post new videos every week covering the exact systems and frameworks I use with my private coaching clients. Okay, and if you've got an interview coming up, good luck. You've got this. Okay, if you need any help, hit the links in the description below. I'm more than happy to work with you one-to-one, or if you have any questions that require quick answers, reach out to me on LinkedIn too.